Hello friends and welcome back to the Zekko Football Channel. You are watching the recap, the show where we go through some of the major talking points from the most recent round of Premier League fixtures. In today's show we have crazy tactical tweaks, insane comebacks, and of course yet more terrible refereeing. So grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a snack, and let's dive in. If you are new to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe, you like the video, and turn on those notifications. It takes 2 clicks. Go on, you know you want to. Go on, click. Thank you. And now, let's recap. As with some great stories, we begin at the end, and we talk about Newcastle losing 2-1 to Liverpool. Liverpool with a massive comeback over the Magpies, and as we can see from the attacking momentum part, Newcastle really did dominate this game against Liverpool, and that's down to some of the decisions, of course, but it's also down to the way that Newcastle set themselves up, the crowd roaring them on. I do liken St James's Park to Anfield and the effect that they can have on their team, but of course we do need to mention the decisions. But first, let's talk about the teams themselves. Newcastle, Eddie Howe obviously naming an unchanged 11 for the 3rd week in a row. This is what I thought they should have done in my preview. I think that he made the right move, having faith in the players, and I think they repaid that to a certain extent. And later on in the game, or later on in this review, we will get to what I think went wrong for Newcastle and what went right for Liverpool. But we need to talk about those major decisions. The first one being Trent Alexander-Arnold's yellow card and then possible red card. The first yellow card for throwing away the ball was correct, but I don't think that giving the foul was correct, so I arguably think that shouldn't have happened. The second yellow card that came for Trent after he already received his first one for the foul on Gordon was a denial of a break, which is a yellow card for me as well, so he probably should have been sent off by the letter of the law, but I'm glad he wasn't because the first one wasn't a foul. Does that make sense? Okay. Right, we have Virgil van Dijk's red card. I don't know where the questions are with this. Liverpool fans are going to have to let me know in the comments below because I didn't really get it. He's one-on-one or last man, essentially, because Isak is going to go in. And to be fair, it's the first time and only time that Isak managed to get in between those Liverpool backline and then managed to get himself towards goal. But he was on towards goal. He rolled Van Dijk and he was on to get a shot off against Alisson. Van Dijk goes straight through him. Yes, he wins the ball after he takes the man, but he still goes through the man. So I'm not sure where the issue is. It's a denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, and for me, it is a red card. Let's talk about the game in itself, because Newcastle did dominate this match. They did. Guimaraes, Joelinton, and Tonali, like we said in our preview, they did have too much physical energy and physical power for Szoboszlai, McAllister, and Endo. They drove through that Liverpool midfield, and yes, the red card helped, of course. Yes, not having Luis Diaz on the pitch was a hindrance to Liverpool, of course, but really, Newcastle should have run away with this game, especially in the first half. They were by far the better side. They were on top. They dominated all of their duels, they won the second balls, they managed to recycle possession round to Anthony Gordon, and when you have a look at some of the average positions, I was extremely impressed by this midfield three who dominated this match. Tonali is an absolute gem, I cannot stress that enough. I thought he was going to struggle a little bit in this league, I really did, but he's come on, and to be fair to him, Eddie Howe wanted Tonali. He was his main pick. He begged and pleaded for him and he got his man, and he ran the show for, I'd say, a good 60 minutes. He was sensational. Joelinton bringing that physicality as well. We do need to talk about that while we're talking about decisions, because the referee, I think it was David Brooks. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was David Brooks. Off the top of my head, the referee was very questionable, and I say that on a Liverpool point of view. They had so many fouls against them, but no Newcastle player was booked. Joelinton barged into, I'd say, about 15 Liverpool players. Now obviously that's not the case because Newcastle only gave away 16 fouls, but it felt like that. It felt like every single pass that was made by a Liverpool player, Joelinton was just going through the back of them. And while he didn't give away a foul, it was still quite rough conduct, and I thought that while it did give an unsettling edge to that Liverpool midfield, and Joelinton did a good job of making sure that they were continuously on edge and always uncertain about what they wanted to do, it did appear a little bit rough, and for that reason I'm surprised that he didn't get a talking to, or that he didn't give away a foul. Very surprising. The referee was extremely lenient on Newcastle in this game, very harsh for certain things. I don't think that was a yellow card, obviously we've talked about that, but I do think it was a red. So I think Liverpool can feel a little bit hard done by. Newcastle were given the rub of the green in this one, to be honest. But if we go back to the major average positions, I thought that Newcastle did a very good job. Unfortunately for them, and this is where everything fell down, Almiron just couldn't pick up the form that he found last season. And he had so many different chances, so many different opportunities fell to him, and I just think he snatched at them. He had one decent moment where Alisson saves and it gets tipped onto the bar, yes, but he had so many good opportunities. Isak, apart from when Van Dijk got sent off, never managed to get in between the lines. Anthony Gordon had a brilliant couple of runs against Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he really failed to dominate that duel. I thought that he did well at driving, but then he decided to go backwards and recycle possession, almost like he didn't have enough confidence to either beat Alexander-Arnold for pace or to drive through the heart of that Liverpool defence. And I think Liverpool's name almost went in front of them and just stopped Newcastle from being able to progress. They got in their own heads, I think, and the crowd started to get a little bit edgy, especially when it got to the 70th minute and on. I thought that Newcastle had Liverpool for the taking for a good 70 minutes, and they just never managed to capitalise. And that's something they're going to need to learn, especially going into the Champions League. When you're on top, you need to kill your games. Almiron had a numerous amount of chances. Anthony Gordon had a couple of pot shots. But apart from that, there was too much recycling of possession when they were in dangerous scenarios, and they didn't have the cutting edge capability to be able to finish a team, unlike Liverpool, who had one man on their side, and his name is Darwin Nunez, who has now arrived for me in the Premier League. Those two finishes were absolutely sublime. His pace ripped apart Newcastle United, and I thought he was absolutely sensational. He was extremely lucky for the first goal, I believe, was Sven Botman's flick off his back onto his heel, which perfectly was a through ball for Nunez. But you need to get some luck sometimes, and he hasn't had a lot of it in front of goal. And the way he took that shot was effortless. It was fantastic pinpoint, and I really do feel happy for him. I think he's off to an absolute blinder. And if he can continue that kind of form, having that impact off the bench, especially in moments where Mo Salah, apart from the assist to Nunez, didn't really do a lot. He wasn't really in the game. Hakpo struggled to really make an effort, and I think that it's moments like this that will give Darwin Nunez the utmost confidence to be able to continue. If we have a look at some of the statistics, we can see that Newcastle dominated the ball as we thought they would. They had more shots. They had more shots on target. I thought Liverpool did an amazing job to stay in the game, but I think it was helped by Newcastle and their hesitancy to really go forwards. It was such an intriguing game to watch, but in the end, Newcastle just failed to capitalise on the moments that they had, but Liverpool didn't fail. They managed to capitalise, and they end the game by 2-1. A fantastic win for the Reds. If you have not watched my Premier League predictions video, I implore you to go and do so, because that's where we talk about Tottenham Hotspur being an entertaining team to watch, and talking about some of the football that they play going forwards. If you haven't watched it, please go and check it out. If you have, you understand what I'm talking about. Tottenham Hotspur were fantastic against Bournemouth. I thought they were a joy to watch, and I don't often say that, and I haven't been saying that about Tottenham for a good 2 years. Bournemouth are not a side to be messed with. I like Bournemouth a lot, and I think they're doing some good things. I don't think they should let this result sway them. I think they will get into a win soon, but the couple of games they've had recently have been very tough. Liverpool, obviously, and Tottenham. I don't think they should take too much negatives or too many negatives from this. Tottenham were absolutely fantastic, though, and that's where we're going to be lending our focus to. It seemed quite a close affair if we have a look at the attacking momentum bar. Tottenham having some of the major chances, of course, but Bournemouth still holding some of this here. I mean, if you take a look at that, that's Bournemouth dominating towards the end of the first half and then towards the start of the second half. I thought they did very well. Kluivert, I think, will come into his own, but they just seemed a little bit hesitant in really recycling possession. I thought Rothwell and Christie did a decent job of holding that midfield, but Semenyo, who really did come into it in the second half, and Kluivert really failed to make an impact down those wings, especially in the first half. Billing drifting in and out of the game as well. I didn't think he had as much presence as I think Bournemouth and Andoni Areola will have wanted. Dominic Solanke was very quiet as well. But let's focus on Tottenham, because Tottenham played some scintillating, sensational football, and it's the fullbacks yet again that really caused the problems for this Bournemouth side, like they did for the Manchester United side in the game previously. We talk about the way they drift into midfield, going next to Yves Bissouma, who was the main linchpin in that Tottenham midfield defence, and then James Maddison and Matar Sarr go forwards and maintain those pockets of space just in front of the back four. Or just in front of the Bournemouth back four, I should say. And what happened here is that Semenyo and Kluivert, from a defensive point of view, because Bournemouth like to be such a high-pressing side, that's how Iraola likes to go and do his thing. He likes to have his sides go out and press extremely high. But with the way that Tottenham had the ball and the way that they managed to beat the press, it was extremely easy for them to get out because of the midfield presence they had through the fullbacks. If we have a look at this, you can see that Adoji is here and Porro is here. What happened is they kept drifting into midfield next to Bissouma, and this meant that both Semenyo and Kluivert failed to really get any kind of a foothold because they didn't know whether to follow them in field or whether to hold their position. They just didn't know. They didn't know whether to follow them. And that meant that there was always a free man for Tottenham going forwards, and it allowed them to play through the press so much easier. Or so much better, I should say. It was just a brilliant show of the way that this system can really overload certain areas, and I was extremely impressed in the way that Tottenham managed to play their way through the lines. James Maddison being faultless yet again. He seamlessly fit into this Tottenham team. Richarlison is seriously struggling in front of goal, and he's not really picking up the pockets of space that I think you would have wanted in this Ange Postecoglou system. And Kulusevski is really starting to come into his own again. The run across the back four for the second goal I thought was extremely impressive. Heung-min Son holding out that width. He's done a very good job not to drift in field, because it'd be very tempting to. He hasn't seen a lot of the ball, but when he does, he drives at his player, and I do think he's doing quite a good job for the Spurs outfit. James Maddison dictating play, dropping that little bit deeper next to Bissouma at times to really progress the ball forwards. He's taking a foothold into and grabbing this Tottenham Hotspur team and pulling them forwards. He's experienced now, and I do think that his time at Leicester has really helped to shape him as the player that he wants to be, and it's really helping him really help the younger players like Porro, like Adoji, like Matar Sarr to be able to drift forwards in the game. And again, I thought Bissouma had a fantastic game, just drifting past players whenever he needs to bring those pockets of space, open that little bit more. As I said, Bournemouth do not need to be concerned that little bit with this. I think they've had a couple of decent matches against Liverpool and against Tottenham, and sooner rather than later they will start to pick up wins. But as for Tottenham, it was their day, and I think they thoroughly deserve their 2-0 victory. They played Bournemouth off the park in certain occasions, and I do think they're going to do that with a couple of other teams, and more importantly, they looked quite defensively solid, especially in the first half. The game ended Tottenham 2, Bournemouth 1, and I've been very impressed with Spurs. A test is going to come their way at some point, but at the moment, they're passing everyone. And finally, we have Manchester United 3, Nottingham Forest 2. If you have not seen my recent video stated Manchester United are the worst defending side in the Premier League, then please do go and check that out, because I could not have been made more right in the first 5 minutes of this game, where Manchester United went 2-0 down. The first one being an amazing counter-attack by Nottingham Forest, Awani making a break and beating the likes of Marcus Rashford for pace to be able to slot home against Andre Onana. And then the second one, Willy Bolly making a massive header. Manchester United players not even jumping. I don't think they have a defensive bone in their squad. It is quite incredible. However, so was the comeback that they made against Nottingham Forest. I thought they did a very good job of maintaining the composure. A key goal from Christian Eriksen to start off that comeback was massive. Casemiro obviously getting that second thanks to an assist from Bruno Fernandes, and a almost assist before the assist, if that makes sense, from Marcus Rashford, just dinking the ball over to the right hand side of the box, allowing Bruno to really head the ball back towards Casemiro, who did fluff it somewhat but managed to convert the ball into the back of the net sooner rather than later. And I was impressed at home by the way that Manchester United pushed higher up the pitch. They dedicated themselves to making sure that they pinned Nottingham Forest in and stopped the counter-attack, and for the most part they did do that. Look at this high line. If you compare that to the Nottingham Forest high line going the other way, that's how deep they were. It's crazy. They didn't get too far ahead either, and it meant that the pitch was extremely condensed, and it also meant that the winning back of the ball was so much easier for Manchester United because it was so much closer to the Nottingham Forest goal. The counter-attacks weren't really there, and they did do a good job of stifling Nottingham Forest from being able to get out. That being said, they obviously conceded the first goal, and we talked about Nottingham Forest being an extremely good transitional side. I spoke about this in my Premier League predictions. Please do go check that video out if you haven't done already. But we talked about Awani, Morgan Gibbs-White, Bren Johnson. We also talked about the likes of Anthony Elanga once he starts to come into the side. And a front three that is extremely dangerous. They have stamina, they have energy, and they have quality in those areas. Whether Brennan Johnson will stay at Nottingham Forest remains to be seen, but I hope he does, because it really does turn this Nottingham Forest into something that's extremely dangerous. Ryan Yates and Danilo really did struggle later on in the second half of the game to really hold themselves against this Manchester United press. Joe Worrell did a good job for the most part, but he of course gave away that red card. Was it soft? I think it was a little bit soft perhaps. The penalty was a penalty for Marcus Rashford. I do think he was taken down. I don't really see the question marks there. He isn't diving, so I'm not really sure what's going on. Aaron Bissaka and Diogo Dalot did a good job coming into midfield to make sure that the pressure was still on through the middle of the pitch, making sure that Marcus Rashford and Antony were able to keep their wide positions. And overall, it was just a little bit too much for Nottingham Forest. I thought that Bruno Fernandes had an absolutely sensational game converting that penalty, and it really did show his captain-like quality, which he does have at times. It just gets overshadowed by a lot of whining and play acting. Generally, Manchester United, I don't think we've learned too much. They are still vulnerable at the back, they have an incredibly soft underbelly, and they need to fix a lot of problems. I haven't been convinced with Andre Onana and his saving potential either, by the way. I do think he could have done a lot more for the Awani goal. But that being said, let him bed in. I suppose I'll give him some time, but for the most part, I haven't been overly convinced. Nottingham Forest were very good on the transition, but Manchester United had enough quality within their ranks and enough determination, and to be quite frank with you, enough time to be able to turn it around. Finally, let's have a look at some of the statistics. Man United obviously coming out on top with a 2.83 expected goals, 2.06 expected assists, 66 ball possession, and in the end I think they run out worthy winners. But it did get a little bit dicey, didn't it, United fans? It did get a little bit dicey, and if they play a team with anywhere near the quality of a more difficult opposition, I think they're really going to struggle. Nottingham Forest, I thought, could have done better in the game, but generally, Man United just rolled over on certain occasions, and if they play that or do that against better opposition, they're going to be hurt far, far more. Who's their next game? Oh yes, Arsenal. That's going to be fun. The game ended Manchester United 3, Nottingham Forest 2. I think Forest did very well, and I think their transitional play will only get better. They're going to be a danger for a lot of teams going into the future. As for Manchester United, they have a lot of work to do, but they managed to get this one over the line. And finally, let's go over some of the games during this match week to just round up. We have Chelsea playing against Luton in the first game of the weekend, and they won that game by 3-0. As we can see by the attacking momentum bar, Chelsea really did dominate this game. Raheem Sterling seriously coming into contention with his play. He scored 2 goals. Nicholas Jackson got on the score sheet as well, and Chelsea are starting to purr. I've got a bit of concern for Luton Town though. They are really starting to worry me. They're not really getting into games. They're not really converting too many chances, and the one goal that I have seen them score was a penalty. They lose this game by 3-0, and they're going to need to pick up the pace at some point. Let's move on to Brentford against Crystal Palace, who were really vying for a difficult spot in the Premier League. I thought the Brentford did a very good job of maintaining their pressure. Kevin Schade getting his first goal of the campaign. I thought he was very, very good. But Crystal Palace showing their grit, showing their determination, a key component of a Roy Hodgson side. Joachim Andersen getting that goal for them as well, being a very good defensive linchpin in the side. Brentford doing Brentford things, but Palace doing Palace things, and they share the spoils 1-1. Wolves picked up arguably the most important 3 points, I would say, of the weekend. Genuinely. They have been linked with relegation by myself and many other people, but also it's against one of your major rivals for that relegation spot. And to win that game away from home at Goodison Park is incredible, especially after some of the saves that Jose Sarr made. Once you finish watching this, just park this over and then go and check out the highlights for this game, because it was incredible. Jose Sarr making one of the greatest saves that I think I've ever seen, clawing the ball out of the net when it had no right to do so. It was incredible, brilliant. It was a great game. Well, no, that's not the case. It was not a great game, but it still had a lot of heart, determination, and Jose Sarr picking up a 9.7 rating according to this, which is pretty incredible, especially when you consider that's a goalkeeper. Really, it was interesting, and it was an important game for Wolves to win. They do end up winning that game, and it might just kickstart their season. It remains to be seen. Arsenal have dropped points against Fulham 2-2. Bukayo Saka, what are you doing? Please? Passing the ball back through into your defence with no knowledge that a defender is there. Blind pass, not really paying attention to what you're doing in the first minute. And then Ramsdale out of his goal, whether he's coming, whether he's not, we don't know. He gets wrong-footed by Andreas Pereira, who managed to really convert that chance that was given to Fulham in the first couple of minutes, and then Arsenal failed to really come back into the game. A question is going to need to be asked of Kai Havertz and whether he is the correct signing for this Arsenal Football Club side, but really I think a lot more time needs to be given. I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans go into meltdown almost. I mean, genuinely just losing their minds because of Kai Havertz. Give him time. He's played 3 matches. Calm down. He will be fine. He'll find his runs, he'll find his momentum, and he'll find the pace of the game. He just needs a little bit of time. Bukayo Saka obviously converting from the spot to redeem himself, and it looked like Arsenal were going to get the winner with Eddie Nketiah. However, Joao Palhinha with the clutchest of goals in the 87th minute, bringing it back for Fulham. Arsenal with the 3.2 expected goals, 3.13 expected assists, and yet they only get 2. It's just the fundamentals of football that are so incredibly interesting to watch. Fulham almost had no right to win that game, and yet they get a point out of it. They had no right to get a draw almost. 0.5 XG, 0.3, but they stuck in there. They defended valiantly. Arsenal failed to convert their chances. Fulham took full advantage of theirs, and it ends 2-2 when they share the spoils. I know one side will be perfectly happy with that, and it's not going to be Arsenal. Brighton losing 3-1 against West Ham. Now, this is an interesting talking point, because Brighton play some of the best football in the league, and a lot of people have been talking about them challenging for European places, and the pressure that then comes with that. But there's no pressure on Brighton. Nobody thinks that Brighton will do it. And nobody talks about Brighton in the same ilk that they do at Liverpool, that they do at Manchester United, that they do at Chelsea or at Arsenal. And so when results like this happen, people just brush it over and be like, it's Brighton. And I mean that in no disrespect. I think it's a brilliant thing for Brighton. But look at the attacking momentum bar. Look at it. West Ham won this game 3-0. All of these green bars are Brighton. And nobody's going to be talking about how they dominated the game but didn't really create too many chances. Nobody. It's not a thing. I mean, we are, but that's because we do things differently on this channel, and you know why. So if you enjoy this, subscribe. Thank you. Pascal Gross obviously getting the goal, dictating play by a lot, or by a large margin, I should say. But West Ham playing football the way that David Moyes likes. Strong, direct, incredibly powerful. Jarrod Bowen, James Ward-Prowse and Michael Antonio understanding running, understanding when they're going. I saw a hilarious stat that halfway through the game West Ham had completed 13 passes, whereas Brighton had completed 220. It's incredible scenes. Look at this. Brighton trebled, more than trebled West Ham's passing. It's incredible. And yet West Ham win by 3-1. There are many different ways to win a game of football, and West Ham have just proven that there is another. And it doesn't need to be pretty. It doesn't. Burnley losing 3-1 to Aston Villa. I had Burnley staying up, and I still do if you check out my Premier League predictions. There are a couple of different takes there. You might enjoy them. But Aston Villa really did put them to the sword in certain instances. Matty Cash getting a double. I mean, that's great for them. Changing to a back 3, changing the way that they play, and then going forwards. I mean, the way that they fluctuate in different positions I think is extremely good. Then you got Moussa Diaby, who has hit the ground running. Ollie Watkins is suffering in his goal return for that, but I think that getting your new signing bedded in is extremely important. Burnley are concerning me a little bit, but we need to give them a little bit more time. They've played some difficult opposition, Man City, Aston Villa, and it remains to be seen how they manage to convert themselves against better opposition, or I suppose lower opposition. No disrespect to any of the teams, but there's just a hierarchy of the way that things play. If they played a Wolves, if they played a Fulham perhaps, it might be a closer game. Aston Villa did a very good job of converting their chances, as did Sheffield United, and it looked like they were going to nick it at the end, but they couldn't. Man City just upped the tempo and upped the ante just towards the end of the game. An interesting thing about Man City here, in that they didn't change the way that they played, or they did change the way that they played, I should say. They played this 4-2-3-1, and I do mean a 4-2-3-1, and it was very strange to see. A lot of emphasis on wing play, a lot of emphasis on overlapping fullbacks, on fullbacks backing up the wingers. Kovacic didn't really go forwards, Rodri didn't really move either. Alvarez drifting from side to side, very Kevin De Bruyne-ish, but they didn't have a defender come into midfield. They didn't have Alvarez really going forwards with Harden, some kind of a two-man strike force. It was odd, and I do mean odd because that's not very Man City-like, and I don't know whether they're trying to prep themselves for Doku, who was on the bench, to come on. Perhaps they're changing the way they play because they know they're going to have a really pacey winger down one of the sides. Maybe Grealish starts to get in the goals once he starts to come in at the back post. I'm not so sure, but it seemed like a very strange setup, and it looked like a setup that Sheffield United were able to read pretty easily. Now, yes, due to some quality and obviously Erling Haaland and Rodri, who swings at it with his left foot and manages to convert a goal. But apart from that, I thought that City struggled to really create too many chances against what was a very hard-working and quite good Sheffield United backline, and they did get the goal through Bogle. And in the end, I thought that they were worthy of a draw. I thought they defended valiantly, and yes, they had less possession. Yes, all of the stats, yes, fine. But I thought they did okay. And when you consider where both sides are coming from, when you consider the impact that both sides have, I thought that overall Man City were quite poor for the day. And I wonder whether it was the tactical setup, whether it was this two-man midfield that didn't really change, didn't really fluctuate. I'm not sure. But it's going to be one to watch, especially if they continue to play it like this. Strange. And those are the games, so let's take a look at the Premier League table, which means absolutely nothing right now. But just for a bit of fun, Man City are the only team with a 100% record. West Ham in second, Tottenham in third. What is going on? This is fantastic. And as you can see, there is the rest of the Premier League table. But what I want to hear is from you. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on the weekend's fixtures. What are your main takeaways? What are your main talking points? Do you think that Arsenal need to get rid of Kai Havertz? Do you think that Crystal Palace are going to be able to challenge for the top 10 places? Do you think Manchester United are the worst defending side in the Premier League? And how well do you think Wolverhampton Wanderers will do going into the future? Will West Ham stay in the top 4? Will they? It's anyone's guess, it's anyone's game. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, take care.